Hi, this is Mike, WB4HUC, and this video is just to show how I was able to connect an external software-defined receiver to the K4 to generate a panadapter that can be displayed on the computer. Now, the first question you're probably asking is, since you can already send the LCD display to the computer and display it, why do you need to do it again using different hardware and different software? Well, you probably don't. I just did it out of curiosity to see if it could be done. I've had this itch I've been wanting to scratch for a while just to see if it could be done, and it can, and it was pretty easy once you get things figured out. So I thought I would just talk through that for whatever it might be worth to anybody. So here we go, and I'll try to keep it kind of short. This isn't a thing to teach you how to use SDRUNO, which is the software that runs the SDRPLAY RSP1 receiver that I'm using. It's just a quick sort of explanation of how I did it. So here we go. So as you can see here, we have two displays. This one is generated from the HDMI output of the K4, so it mirrors the LCD panel. This one is using the SDRUNO software that works with the SDRPLAY RSP family of software-defined receivers, except maybe the most recent one. I think they've changed software now, and if you buy one of their current versions of the receiver, you have to use this new software. But my receiver is several years old, and it works fine with this SDRUNO. So let's talk about operating the thing. So as you can see, there are several signals here, and if you watch, if I use this and scroll up in frequency, you can see it changes up here. So the radio is communicating with the SDRUNO software and vice versa. If I click on this signal, you can see the radio change to go here, although this is probably wrong mouse. I have two computer mice. One is connected through a USB dongle to the radio itself, which is this one. The other is connected to the computer, which is this one. But as you can see, as I change frequencies up here, it also changed down here. If I point and click in the LCD display for the radio, it'll also change down here, and the frequencies are the same, right? So they're talking. I can change, I can point and click in either display and the other will follow. I can change modes if I wanted to do that up here. So if I wanted to go to CW, then you'll see down here, CW mode selected, and that's true. So keep an eye where this mouse is. Keep an eye down here. So this is true whether I select CW reverse or CW. It just says CW mode. USB mode, LSB mode, which is probably what data mode uses, USB data mode, right? I'm not sure. Some of this may not translate directly, but you can see for the most part, when we change modes, they get changed in here also. And then just keep in mind that this is a separate piece of hardware with separate software, and the K4 is communicating with the software to control this extra piece of hardware, if that makes any sense. So how do we do that? There are receive-only connectors on the back of the K4. So if we bring up a picture of the K4 back panel right here, and we'll make this a little larger. So some of this image is going to be cut off because of the area of the screen that I'm capturing, but you see RX antenna in and out, RX antenna 1 in and out. And these are BNC connectors. And sorry about that. Let me start that up again. There we go. So keep the picture of that back panel and those two receive only connectors. So I used a cable, which is a Y cable, 3-headed cable, and this is an RCA phono version, but if you had a cable with the correct connectors, you could use any Y cable. But so the two connectors that form the Y part of the cable plug into those two those two BNC connectors on the back of the radio. And then the other end, the tail of the Y, so to speak, would connect to the antenna connector of the RSP1 receiver that I'm using. So that's the physical connection, the RF connection between the RSP1 and the K4. And we're a low budget operation here, so I don't have a video or a picture of the actual setup. So use your imaginations. So that's the RF connection. The RSP1 receiver also has a USB connection to the computer. So when you plug that in and you fire up the SDRPLAY software, he will find that receiver. You don't have to tell him which port it's on or anything. He will find it. And so that's all done. Now the communication between the radio and the SDRPLAY software is done through another piece of software called OmniRig. And many of you may be familiar with OmniRig. It's used for lots of different things, lots of different radios, lots of different purposes. So let's bring SDRPLAY over here. No. All right, let's do this. We're gonna just to show. So SDR. Nope, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. OmniRig. Let's bring OmniRig over here. So the first thing, when you start OmniRig, you say run as administrator. And on my computer, you have to do that or nothing, or it doesn't work right. Yes, I did. So in my OmniRig setup, there's no selection for the Elecraft K4, so I choose K3. And the K4 is backwards compatible as far as computer control goes with the K3. So that worked fine. And we're on COM port 3. So there's a 9-pin RS-232 connector on the back of the K4. Right here. And I have a cable that has the 9-pin connector on it, and that cable goes to the computer. The back of my computer also has 4 9-pin serial ports on it, and the one that the K4 is plugged into just happens to be COM port number 3. And then you set up this other stuff, and there's your connection. So you start OmniRig, and so OmniRig is running, and then so now COM port 3 can be shared, because that's what OmniRig does. It shares communications ports between hardware and different software packages. So so I'm sharing COM port 3 between the K4 and the SDRPLAY software. So now that you've established that rig 1 is going to be the Elecraft K3, although in my case it's a K4, but don't worry about that. Now you got to configure SDRPLAY. So we bring up SDRPLAY is kind of a complicated piece of software. It takes a while to learn. Learning curve is a bit steep, but once you learn it, it's fine. And so we bring up the virtual receive control window. We go to settings, and normally, if you're not sharing a COM port, you can just say which COM port you're using. Say enable, connect, and away you go. Well, I'm using OmniRig, so we go over here to OmniRig, and we deselect this, so this is not in use. Go to OmniRig, we say Rig 1, and then you check these 3 boxes, but not this box. And I won't go into that stuff. That's not what we're here to discuss, but you can see these are checked. That then brings this up, so you can select it or not select it. So you can see now I'm changing this. We're down to 274, but this didn't change. But if we click this, that we want to synchronize OmniRig, I'm sorry, if we want to synchronize SDR Uno with whatever's on the other end, in this case the K4, you click that, turn it on, and now they're the same. And if you go up here and change, you can see this changes. If I go up here and change, you can see this changing down here. So they're talking to each other. So everything is fine. So that wasn't too difficult. That wasn't too difficult at all. And again, if we point and click in here, it changes here. So these two, the K4 is communicating with SDR Uno software. So then you have to go into the K4 and set the K4 up to use the 2 receive-only antenna jacks that we showed you when we showed you the back panel of the radio. So we go into the main RX, and we go into antenna configuration, and use subset, and click antenna, or RX1, and then click equal TX antenna, and then go to sub RX, antenna config, same thing, RX1 and TX antenna, which is probably already selected. It may not be depending on what you've done, but anyway, select this. And then there's one other thing you need to do. So there's a button on the front of the K4 on the left-hand side that's labeled RX antenna. You have to push that button to activate the RX antenna jacks. So if which they are now, because you can see I've got a signal here that's coming to the RSP1 receiver through the receive-only antenna jack. Well, if I push the button to turn that off, you can see the signal goes away. So there's no signal coming through the receive-only antenna jack to the RSP1 receiver. And that's what happened to me when I first got all this hooked up. I had the RF connection made, I had the computer connection made, everything should have been okay, but I wasn't seeing any signal. So I went to Google. Google's our friend. I went to Google and looked up Elecraft K4 receive only antenna or RX antenna, whatever. And I found some link somewhere that said, oh, push the RX antenna button on the front of the radio. And when I do that, signals appear. And the Elecraft says the RX, the receive-only antenna jacks, are protected from the transmitter. So apparently what's happening here in my case is the main antenna is connected to the PL259 on the back of the radio that says antenna 1. So again, if we go back to our drawing, excuse me, our image of the back of the radio, my antennas are connected to this SO239 antenna 1. So it appears that what's happening is when we turn on the receive only antenna jack, that the signal coming in through here gets routed to this output jack, and then which is connected to the RSP receiver, And that's what the RSP receiver is listening to, is the signals coming out of this connector that are routed from this connector, is what I'm surmising from what I've read. And these two jacks, according to Elecraft, are protected from the transmitter. So if you key up, you're not going to blow up the receiver you have connected to these jacks. I haven't tested that yet. What did Ronald Reagan say? Trust but verify. So I trust, but I have not verified. So I'll probably do that at some point just to make sure that's true. And I'm sure it is. I don't have any reason to doubt it. Anyway, so all those connections are made. So what you're seeing here is the same signals that you're seeing here through the same antenna jack, antenna 1. It's getting routed to the receive only output jack and fed into the separate receiver. So everything's working. And so there you go. Now, one other thing I'll mention is in the K4, and I may have already been showing this, I don't remember. The external monitor function says mirror LCD. We change it to panadapter. Now we're seeing the panadapter. And you're seeing more or less the span of each panadapter isn't exactly the same, but they're close. So this signal corresponds to this signal corresponds to this signal, etc. So if I go there, if I go there. So my personal preference is I prefer this to this, because the frequency information down here is a little more detailed than the frequency information up here, and the text is larger down here than it is up here. So between the two, this display or this display, I prefer this one. But you know, you don't have to use this display. You can always go back and just select mirror the LCD, and then we're back to a more useful display, I guess. Nope, wrong mouse, sorry. I have two computer mice here. This one is connected directly to the radio. So now we're back to where we started. So like I said, you have everything you need here, but I just wanted to make sure I could get this to work. So there you go. It works fine. The only thing I need to verify, like I said, is that transmitting on the K4 won't blow up this receiver connected to the receive only jacks, and I'm sure it won't. It didn't on my Omni 7. I used to run an Omni 7, Ten-Tec Omni 7. It was connected kind of in the same way, and the jacks that the RSP receiver were connected to were protected from the transmitter, no problems at all. And I'm sure this is the same. So there you go. Just an exercise in what if, and can you do it? You can. So now that I know that, I guess I'm done with I guess I'm done with this, but it was just an exercise to see if I could do it, and I can. So now I'm happy. I may not use it, probably won't use it, you know, but it's, if I ever need to, for whatever reason, it's there and I know how to make it work. So there you go. As always, appreciate you watching. Thank you.